So, finding inspiration is important, right? Inspiration is honestly an interesting thing. It can light a fire in you and lead to the creation of something fun and interesting. I know for me, it gives me a feeling of warmth and excitement in my chest, and honestly, it leaves my mind racing and my hands just itching to draw, paint, write, just to create something. Sometimes it makes me want to crochet, anything. At the same time, though, inspiration is a fickle thing, and finding it can be difficult. Before we get into that, though, hey, what you drawing? This particular picture is of one of the newest characters that I have drawn for Trace. I'm not quite going to reveal her name yet here. I'm having fun actually leaving the name reveals first for my patrons. The patrons that I have, they already know her name. But she's an interesting character, and I think she's going to be fun to play with as I play around more with Trace. And I really wanted to draw, like, a nice fall scene, like a kind of warm but still breezy fall day. And I actually kind of enjoyed doing the background. I know it's very simple whenever it shows up. It's very simple and a little bit more abstract-ish paintery, kind of like fall trees in the back, like coming into the frame. But I do like it. And I think that her hair is very pretty and is probably my favorite part aside from like the piercings. But now that we've gotten through that, let's jump back into this. So like I said, finding inspiration can be really difficult. It can be something that is hard to grasp. Some days we just feel uninspired no matter what we do and no matter what we look at that usually does inspire us. Sometimes looking at other people's art inspires us, and then sometimes looking at other people's art just kills our own drive because we get caught in a comparison loop where we just endlessly, oh, my stuff will never be that good. Oh, I'll never get skilled enough to do that kind of thing. Oh, I'll never get to their level. I'm just not good enough. That's the kind of thing that can happen with comparison. And that can be an even bigger blow to your inspiration, especially because inspiration is so fickle. Now, one thing that I have learned about inspiration is that sometimes you've got to learn how to just draw through not having it, or create through not having it. There are times when I sit down to draw, and I'm just like, what am I gonna do? Nothing is calling to me. Nothing really wants to be drawn. And then I start doodling and something comes to me. It's not quite the feeling of inspiration or being inspired, but the enjoyment of creating starts to come into play after a bit. And I think it's important to acknowledge that while inspiration is a wonderful and important thing, we can't always rely on it. And I think you get some artists, not just visual artists, music, crochet, drawing, painting, anything where you create something, woodworking, anything like that, that is art. Anything where you create something is art, really. And sometimes that inspiration just is not there. And sometimes we have to create regardless. No matter what, we all sometimes have to. Because if you just sit and wait for the inspiration, it may not come up. There are just some days where I do not feel inspired. But I just want to do some little doodles and draw some cute little guys and see how cute the little characters turn out. And that alone can make me feel better. Sometimes that alone leads to being inspired. But sometimes we need to try and find those sources that make us want to create. Those sources that make us want to reach out and do more. And when it comes to finding those things, that can be difficult. You have to learn more about yourself because you have to learn what speaks to you personally that you see and what makes you want to create. And sometimes it can come from some really unexpected places. Here, I'll use an example for me. There are times where I'll be listening to just any kind of music. I like all kinds of different music. All kinds. I have yet to find a whole genre of music that I don't like. I like something out of everything, if nothing else, for the sound. Just the actual sound of the instrumental or something like that. Even if I don't vibe with the lyrics. Sometimes I'll be listening to that and it'll be a completely different mood of what ends up coming to mind to create. And suddenly my brain will latch on to, I want to write a zombie story. Let's do a magical girl AU of something that I really like. Oh my god, I have an idea for a new character. And just something about the sound just sets it off. Sometimes I'll get a random thought pop in my head. Those happen a lot. I know I've mentioned it before, I have ADHD. Random thoughts are kind of my domain. That is, I live there, okay? I have a permanent residence, and it's going to be permanent forever. It will not change. I will not be moving anytime soon. Probably not ever. Random thoughts just kind of happen. And they can spur these big moods where suddenly I'll go from not wanting to make anything or not creating anything to suddenly I've got 6 or 7 pages written about, a completely out of context scene of something that has been floating around my head. Like, oh, I want to sit down and actually write a bio for this character I've been working on. Can't think of where to start. Can't think of where to start at all. I see something completely off the wall and random, and it just puts a few words in my head, and suddenly, usually for a completely different character than I was wanting to write for, but I've got 6 or 7 pages of a background and of a bio for this character, and it'll just hit out of nowhere. And sometimes there are specific things that I do when I want to get myself in the mood for a specific thing. A great outlet for me, and a great way to find inspiration, is to immerse myself in other media. Now, these things won't work for everybody. Sometimes there are moods where even I get absorbed in the different media, and all thoughts of what I was trying to figure out just bye-bye. Whoop, bye. That train is gone. It's not coming back, okay? I missed that train. There is no other ticket. There is no other train leaving, and it's just gone. And that's frustrating. Other times, I get involved in playing a game or something, and then next thing you know, I want to stop playing the game so I can go draw because this has given me new ideas. Or I want to stop playing the game so I can go write because this has given me new ideas. A great example is with Trace. Trace is a good one because it's kind of set in 2 different time periods. I will give that much. I'm going to give a few things without getting into anything really spoilery. There's 2 parts really to the story. You have the modern part, and then you have the past part. The modern part, it does get into a bit more of modern character struggles, but there will be a good amount of action, so long as I can learn how to properly draw that and all that. It's more of it's not a slice of life. It does have it's going to have a good amount of combat and action, and it is going to have big conflict that needs handled because fate of the world, yada yada yada. Because I enjoy that a lot. But there is a past component too. You've got the modern, then you've got the past. The past is much more, honestly, just to describe it real quick, fantasy D&D party, okay? That is the best way to do it. As a matter of fact, the character in this illustration is the group's rogue. She is the rogue for very good reasons. She definitely has the background to pull it off. And she has quite a few connections, quite a lot of them. And I do definitely love anything fantasy oriented, but I like to do it my way. You get a lot of people who go kind of dumb. It's fantasy, but they'll still be like, that's not realistic. Really? Neither are the flames coming out of my character's palm. What else isn't real? What else needs to be realistic about this world with certain things? And that drives me nuts. I want to talk about that in a different video. But I do my fantasy stuff my way. Because what's the point of creating something if I'm not going to create it my way? If I'm just going to create it somebody else's way, why am I going to create it? But because Trace is a more fantasy-oriented thing, I've actually been, funnily enough, we've been playing, me and my partner have been playing Baldur's Gate. She's been playing it a lot more than me, just because brain go burr, I can't sit still for that long. And I have some weird, I'm just gonna say it, I have some really weird out of nowhere trauma slightly related to video games and backseat gaming and stuff like that. I'm weird about playing a game while somebody's watching me, and even in simple RPGs, there are certain games that I can play just fine with somebody watching me. But things where I have to make choices and dialogue choices and things that can actually affect the game, I can't do it while somebody watches me. I can't. I have a little mini freak out, and I start asking, what did you do here? What do you think's a good choice? Because I don't want to pick a stupid option. And I know that sounds so dumb, but that is a whole can of worms that we are not opening. I am putting away the can opener. We're not getting anywhere near it, okay? And so, anyway, she's been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate, and I'll listen while she plays a lot of the time. And sometimes I'll be drawing, but I also see clips about it, on YouTube. And because of that, I do get hit with little bouts of inspiration, because, it's based around Dungeons and Dragons. And I love it. I love the world. I love the world building. I love everything with it. I love the characters. And things like that, just listening to the game or playing the game. I can't sit still for very long whenever I'm home by myself to play it, because I just get hit by, oh hey, I need to write this down real quick. Oh hey, I need to go and draw this thing that goes with this because I have a new idea. Oh, I need to go draw my character, which at one point I think I might do an illustration of my little character for Baldur's Gate. He is a rogue, and I love him and he's adorkable, and I think he's a goober, and I think I'm going to project my fear of spiders on him. I ran into the phase spiders down in that potential spoilers, but down in that well, and that's the most I'll say, and just, spiders, I don't like spiders, if you can't tell. Like, so long as they don't come in my house, we're good. If you're outside, that is your house, that is fine. Just don't come in my house, okay? Bye-bye. No, go on. I'm going on a lot of tangents in this one, I've noticed. Oh boy, that's going to be fun to edit. Oh. But I digress, of course. I'm good at that. You all know this by now. If anybody doesn't, hi! I'm Nova. I digress a lot. And now you do know. So, anyway, what I was saying was I get inspiration from things like video games. If I want certain inspiration, usually I figure out pretty quick what I go to for inspiration. Like Trace, like I said, the fantasy component. Baldur's Gate, Dragon Age, that's a big one. I do love Dragon Age. So if I'm looking for sci-fi, a lot of times I'll delve into Mass Effect, sometimes Star Trek. I do like Star Trek. Star Wars, it depends on the vibe I'm going for before I lean into that one. Just because I love Star Wars, don't get me wrong, let me preface this with that. Star Wars is like a different sci-fi subgenre. It's more so like, what's it called? Like space opera, I guess. Regardless, it's more of like a sci-fi fantasy thing to me. I have never really umbrella termed it as sci-fi, and as such, when I'm looking at sci-fi, that's not where my brain goes to pull for inspiration. I don't know, it's probably just my brain being weird, it does that. But I play around with sci-fi stuff, so I look at Mass Effect or Star Trek or anything like that. Sometimes, depending on the vibe of sci-fi, sometimes I look at Fallout. If I'm looking for post-apocalyptic, I'll look at Fallout. I know I'm mostly talking about games here, but that's a big one. But then what's really funny is sometimes that inspiration will go in a way that's completely unexpected. And I do have a very good example for that. It's a different comic that I would like to do eventually. It does not have a name, but it started out, I'm gonna be honest with you, it started out as a Dragon Age AU that I played around with, and I have some little illustrations somewhere for. And this is a great example of inspiration can come from unexpected places. Dragon Age gave me inspiration for a zombie story. I know that sounds a little odd, especially because it's not like a set in fantasy times zombie story. Nope, I'm talking modern, but magic is involved. Okay? And I'm talking magic zombies, and I will probably go into that in a different thing, because I would love to do a whole thing on that. But to delve back in to ways that I can get inspiration aside from video games, if you can't think of something or you need inspiration for a pose, I recommend Pinterest. Pinterest is a good one. I am wary because I know there's a lot of stolen art on there. But if you're looking for pose references, it's like sometimes whenever I'm doing a cute couples picture or something, I will type in couples poses or couple portraits, couples pictures, couples photography. Anything like that is a great one. Sometimes I'll just randomly search chibis to see if something jumps out at me just as something that inspires me to draw. I have boards on Pinterest, sometimes for different characters, like a board each for different characters, just because I can put stuff there that I think would vibe with that character. And I like it, and it gives me inspiration when I look back over it to help me realize, what could I draw about this character? What could I draw? What could I create? But it gets important to find your own inspiration. My sources of inspiration won't work for everybody. Sometimes I like to just look outside. Sometimes I like to just look outside, especially in the autumn, and just see how the scenery looks. Because I live somewhere where you can get a good look at a bunch of different scenery. And if you do too, then that's great. I know not everybody does, but you have to be open to what might jump out at you and to what might work well and get your brain rolling. And sometimes that in itself is difficult and frustrating, because sometimes things just don't jump out at you, which is why I think it's important to practice creating even when you aren't inspired. There's a difference between inspiration, motivation, and discipline. Motivation is a hard one. Sometimes you can get motivation, but you're not inspired. That's where you need to maybe have a list of backup ideas of things you can draw. Yeah, I do that. I have a list in certain places that I need to find. Again, it's vanished at the moment. But having a list of things to draw when you aren't inspired is important. If you know where your inspiration comes from a lot of the times, utilize that. If not, have a list. The hardest part, though, is whenever you're lacking motivation and inspiration. That's when you've got to incorporate a bit of discipline. Sometimes, when I need to work on a video, sometimes I am not motivated. Sometimes I'm not inspired. Sometimes I'm neither one. And I just have to sit down and sketch up something anyway. I will never ever give the draw every day advice, because I don't draw every day. I love to draw, and I don't draw every day. Because sometimes you can't. Sometimes there's too much going on in life. It's not really plausible. It's not really feasible. And so I won't ever give that advice, but I will give the advice of, if there's something you need to work on, sometimes you just gotta sit down and do it. Just sometimes you do. And I get it, sometimes your hand won't cooperate. When your hand won't cooperate, or whatever you use to create is not cooperating, you might need to step back for a bit, because discipline is important, but you also don't want to drive yourself to the point of burnout. And that can be a hard balance to find, which is why even if you're self-motivating, making yourself draw, I don't want to say making yourself draw, but kind of making yourself draw. You're getting that work done when you have to. Sometimes you just need to step back. If you don't have some kind of deadline and you don't have something that you need to get done, take a step back, because I don't want anybody getting burnt out. Burnout sucks. It does. But at the same time, I want to be firm that you can't always rely on inspiration. Inspiration is far too fickle. I've said it already. And I think that, if nothing else, just what makes you want to create? What comes to mind that gives you that fuzzy feeling of just, ooh, I want to try that. If you're inspired to try a new craft, do that. That could give you a refresher and make you remember what you loved about creating in the first place. And that's its own kind of inspiration. I might make a series of shorts at one point detailing some different ways to use for inspiration. I think that would be a nice little thing to do. But for now, what do you guys do for inspiration? What do you look to? Are there any particular things that you do? What about inspiration from completely out of nowhere places? Like, what very weird inspiration have you gotten from unlikely sources before? Because I would love to hear about that, because I honestly love when it happens to me, because it's like, where did this even come from? Why are you here? I'm not really complaining, but this is weird, but also kind of entertaining. And I would love to hear you guys' explanations with that. But thank you guys so much for watching. A special thanks to Inside Chaos and Salmon, my patrons. I am working on my revamp for the Patreon. The intention is for that to go live as of December. And once I do, then I'm going to try and keep up more properly on my rewards for Patreon, as well as making sure that early video access is in there as well. I am going to be doing a Halloween type video that's going to be a collection of spooky experiences that I've had. That won't be the next video. I'm gonna have that up on Halloween, so there will be an extra video in the rotation. But thank you guys so much for watching, and as I said, thank you to my patrons, Salmon and Inside Chaos, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!